For whatever reason, I was getting ready to go to the grocery store, which I know what the reason for that is. But the topic of the four types of triangles, and I admittedly was thinking there was only three. I was forgetting about the fourth one. Um, it comes to mind for me because I wonder where the word scalene came from. And scalene is the triangle that I was forgetting about. And it's the triangle that has, um, and I don't have any illustrations. I might remake this video because this is an area that I have interest in. I've always geometry was my favorite class. I didn't like calculus or anything higher. Geometry was my level of comfort. And I like solving problems and having supportive information. So, in a way, I guess, well, I know I have an analytical mind. And so it goes in with my natural thinking processes. So I was wondering, where does the name word scaling come from? And I'll research it further on my own. But this main topic I had started to wonder about when I was looking at some information regarding computer technology. And they were comparing isotopic and cubic systems, but it seemed like they were calling in the same way that the definition of an isosceles triangle, the roots of the word, according to Wikipedia, an and this the difference might be, but it still doesn't make sense to me, which is probably why I struggled with chemistry, because I'm cubic. I know that I'm cubic. And it says isotopes are distinct nuclear species or nuclides of the same element. They have the same atomic number and position in the periodic table. The term isotope, skipping to the next, because this is where I get, I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. The term isotope is formed from the Greek roots isos, which means, according to Wikipedia, equal, and topos, which means place, meaning the same place. Thus, the meaning, and I'm quoting, behind the name is that different isotopes of a single element occupy the same position on the periodic table. It was coined by the Scottish doctor and writer Margaret Todd in 1913. So that's interesting that the Scottish peoples are always peoples that I have and I'm talking about historically, because of historic battles between the Irish and the Scottish, of which, but it might be that the Scottish people think differently, and it's interesting that this is coming and touching on. It's not cultural biases to recognize that people think differently. And I think that it's actually beneficial if you take that stuff apart and say, gosh, and I'm thinking it means this, and this is why I'm having problem understanding this. So back to the topic, and that is that when I think about isotopic system, it seems to be more of a conglomeration of different pieces, like a shattering happened and then something caused it to conglomerate back together into a conglomeration of different size particles and shapes with different sizes, whereas cubic is cubic, 4 equal sides. So when they're using the word equal and the same, to me, it gets confusing when using the word isotopic, or isotope, or isotopic versus cubic. So it might be just the difference, and I'll have to learn what the difference is, or if the difference is a solid state versus like, I'm trying to think of something, a cubic crystal would become. Let me just leave it as a question so that I can come back and research it and possibly redo, for clarification purposes, the the um the question that I have, and to get clarification from anybody else who has a more organized thought process and can clarify or even understand what my question is. I understand what my question is, but I don't know if it really comes down to, I'm questioning whether the word isotopic has been used correctly. And that would take looking further into the roots of the word, and following the areas of interest in which I'm speaking of. And the reason I started thinking about this was because of when I at first glance looked at hydrogen, and I took chemistry in community college and in high school, and I struggled with chemistry. One, probably because I don't like explosions. I don't like to deal with that kind of stuff. And I think that's really the main reason. But really, I'm thinking about the creation of the atom bomb, and if well, one, because I'm questioning the Nobel Peace Prize organization for awarding monies in such large amounts, like large amounts for the time periods, particularly to Oppenheimer. And there's others too that I've researched that seem to be not really geared towards peace, because in my world, obtaining peace doesn't include sending a huge bomb to destroy however many hundreds of thousands of people that the atom bomb destroyed, and then the destruction that followed. Um, and for some odd reason, I feel like the answer might lie in the misconstruence, either purposefully done or mistakenly, as to the definition of the word isotopic versus cubic. So anyway, I think it's an interesting question. A lot of good old boy networks that go back to Einstein and whatnot, who wouldn't allow a complete, there was a complete, there was a whole nother, not really philosophy, but an expansion of what Einstein was saying. But evidently, Einstein had the backing. And there's a cute little photo of Oppenheimer and Einstein that I think I posted on my Facebook page a number of years ago, back in 2014, which, I just remember thinking, well, that makes sense. They're from the same era. That makes sense that they would be friends or have known each other. They're both scientific minds. But to understand the backing and the financial and Oppenheimer funds and where it all started and why it all started might be an interesting, not really angle, no pun intended, but an interesting point of view to look at. And it's interesting to consider also that here in my question, legalities and humanity comes into play into such a specific sort of maybe error, purposeful error. It's kind of like when I asked the question, okay, why didn't Maslow include oxygen in the base of the pyramid when he was defining the hierarchy of needs? It's kind of a similar question. So I'll end it with that. And then I definitely want to come back to and research more. And I think I'm going to do this. I was going to do a little gardening, apartment gardening today, but I think I'm going to research my question more. So anyone with any information who can join in the conversation, please feel free to add to the conversation. I'm not a guru. I like to hear different points of view because I don't like to misinform people, not purposefully or otherwise.